Right, here we go. Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a games writer. I also dabble in game development, and I'm here today to talk about making girly games that aren't patronising. That second bit is the important bit. You may have seen my work on The Guardian, Waypoint / Vice, Rock Paper Shotgun, Eurogamer, a bunch of other places. And you can also follow me on Twitter, which is where I spend roughly 150%. That's me. But today, I'm here to talk to you about girly games. So what are girly games? I kind of think that they're games that are marketed. Question to answer, and I'm kind of every time I've pitched this, it's a bit later. People feel so uncomfortable when we talk about girly games. So historically, shoots have been considered or less serious. You can see here, when you remember that historically embroidery hasn't been taken seriously as a medium because it's women's work. That's a meme. We're not talking about memes, it's fine, let's move on. There's a reason why some of the most successful people in things like fashion and cooking and beauty are men. People can take those, which is a huge problem. Some people pink, which is why when I'm buying toothbrushes, I buy pink toothbrushes because I know my housemates who are guys won't use them. I'm taking advantage of that. It's the reason why Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, everyone says they're terrible. There's a lot of terrible fiction because they are written for women. But La La Land. Now, I think musicals are great, but people tend to think they're bad films because they're more musical, because thing that women go to men, so that they, yeah, when you see something like La La Land come out and everyone goes, wow, it's really good for a musical, and you're kind of like, well, why does that make it bad? Typically anything that is popular with women, people tend to think it's less important. Yeah, so most games are marketed at men. This wasn't me looking for adverts about boobs, but it kind of came up with being adverts about boobs. You've probably seen at least one of these at some point. The one on the bottom right there is Kate Upton, who was hired to be in this campaign, and they said, no, it's okay, she's a character in the game, so we're not promoting her as a person, we're promoting her as a character, and the character she turned out to be was like the shopkeeper. Not really a character, but sure. And you know, you have this PlayStation Vita advert at the top. The PlayStation Vita, it's not even that long ago, and it's got an advert like that, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, most games, as you can see, are marketed at men. It didn't used to be that way. In fact, it used to be that games were marketed at everyone, the same as like toys or films or books. But then in the video game crash of 1983, after that, people started marketing games for boys. So they tried to tap into that teenage market, and it worked. And that's why, like 30 years later, people are still trying to tell us that games are for boys. They weren't always for boys. So when games are created for girls, people tend to turn up their noses. Now, this isn't particularly a helpful screenshot. I searched on Google games for girls, and it came up with a bunch of terrible shovelware. I haven't checked through all of those, but you can probably see most of them are sort of just makeup games, and they look kind of one-dimensional, and they're not very well designed, and they're a bit creepy, really. But you see, it's a problem that feeds into itself. Women don't want to be told that they only like things like fashion and makeup, and heartbreak is apparently another thing we like. And the reason that we feel bad about liking those things is that we're told that they're bad because they're popular with women, so it kind of keeps feeding into itself. We get told things like women must stay in the kitchen, so we go, oh no, I don't like cooking, I don't want you to tell me to get into the kitchen. We get told that fashion is stupid, you know, that it doesn't mean anything, that it's just clothes, everyone wears clothes, who cares if you're interested in fashion? So we feel bad for liking it. And we're constantly told that makeup is vain, and that wearing makeup is deception, and that naturally pretty girls don't need makeup. So then we feel bad for liking makeup, even though like makeup artists is a job where it is an actual art, you know, making people look different, and even like when you make, like the makeup where you make yourself look like a zombie. I don't know if you've seen those. Like, that's a talent. And the problem, as I've said, feeds into itself. So we get told that things that are popular with women are less important because they're popular with women, and then women feel like if they like those things that they're just playing into that. And it's really, it's a cycle that I want people to break out of. The problem isn't necessarily that girly games are, sorry, skipping ahead. This is an example. This is someone saying Taylor Swift is pretty without makeup. She's wearing makeup. She's wearing very obvious makeup in that. But people are saying she looks pretty without makeup. That one on the bottom left is fashion. That's the most fashion picture I could find. Apparently that's fashion. And then I just really liked the top left stock photo of someone lying on a kitchen counter with a tomato. I don't know. It doesn't really illustrate that people think cooking is for women, but I just really like that stock photo. So people think that girliness is bad. We think that femininity is lesser, that it's weak, uninteresting, or unworthy. And I'm here to tell you that it's not. Some of the games I like best involve things like dressing up characters, like you see in The Sims in the top left. Going on dates, as you can see in the top right, that's Harvest Moon. Decorating my house, these two games at the bottom, that one on the left is Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer, and the one on the right is, again, The Sims. There's two Sims in there. These are all very, very popular games. It's obvious that these games aren't lesser because they tap into that market, and liking them doesn't make you less of a gamer. These aren't less gamey than the AAA games that are marketed at men, just because they tackle something that's different. The reason people think these are casual games is because they're trying to undermine the fact that women like them. So here's the problem that we're having at the moment, is that developers think, even while making games for girls, that girliness is lesser, that we're all caught up in this cycle of thinking femininity is bad, that we're all, stupid creatures, that, when you're making a girly game, there's no need to have any respect for your market, and so then that's why they end up making huge piles of shovelware. And we deserve better than that, Women and girls deserve games that are good. It's possible to create games about femininity and about activities that interest women without having to just crank out another game that relies on tired stereotypes without actually engaging with what they're about. So these are Ubisoft's Imagine series. The only one that's not real is the one that's called Imagine Staying Thin on the top row. But the rest of them are real. So the Imagine series is about jobs. It's aimed at women. And it's got some great things in there. It's got Imagine Teacher, it's got Imagine Fashion Designer, Master Chef, actual jobs, but it's also Imagine Cheerleader, Imagine Baby Club, Imagine Babysitters, which is, babysitters isn't a job. Like if you're a childminder, that would be a thing, but a babysitter is something you do when you're a teenager and requires no training, apparently. Anyone could look after. No. So, yeah, it's an interesting series because it's aimed at women and because it could do so much good. But in the end, it ends up just relying on the same stereotypes that women aren't smart. There's one called Imagine Journalist, which I haven't played, but a friend told me about. In Imagine Journalist, what you do is you go to a crime scene, and there's an old woman sitting on a bench, and she looks up at you, and you're a woman, and she goes, "Oh, are you my son?" And you go, "No." But apparently you realize that she is a witness to the crime, so you come back the next day dressed as her son, because that's what journalists do, apparently. And they have such potential to be great role models for women in saying, like, hey, you can do this too. But yeah, like I say, they rely on the negative stereotypes and they don't try to actually engage with their audience in a meaningful way. So an interesting experiment about all of this is Rachel Simone Weil's Femicon Museum project, which is on the right there. So what she does is she imagines an alternate history where games have always been marketed at women, first and foremost. So here, as you can see in this screenshot, this is on The Guardian, so you can go and read that after this. It's a room that's designed to be like a girls' room in the 80s or 90s, but in an alternate history where games are marketed at girls. So you've got an NES in the room, but instead of being sort of a grey and dark grey thing, it's a sort of purple and dove grey sort of. It's like a slight difference, but you can imagine that like that's how it would be. And there's the Barbie games there. It has games that exist already, so it has things like Kirby and Mario, but they're just sort of like, you know, color palette changes, that kind of thing. And you can see on the left there, it imagines if the Mario games were Hello Kitty instead. So again, a palette change, and rather than using Mario as the mascot, it's Hello Kitty, which was already super popular by that time. So the interesting thing about this project is it doesn't just imagine a world where games are girly or where they've always been girly. It imagines a world where people actually care about girliness, where girliness is the default and girly isn't an insult. The reason that girly games are so often terrible shovelware games is that their makers don't care about their market or about their subject matter, because, as I've said already, they just have that mindset that girliness is lesser. And, you know, it's okay that girls like things like fashion and horses, but to then go, oh, let's just, I don't know, make a game where just get some horse and you put hats on the horse, I don't know. You know, you're not actually engaging with why women or people in general like horses and like fashion. And when it comes to that, you have to actually do some research into the matter. You find out why girls like fashion and horses. And you don't just rely on the same lazy, tired tropes, because you'll end up making a game that's patronising and kind of bad. Now, there are some really good games on the market now at the moment. These games are all relatively recent. So the one on the left is Toca Hair Salon. It's not marketed specifically at women, it's marketed at children in general, but most of the people that I know that play this are my age, because it's just a good game. It takes a subject matter, hairdressing, that would be typically aimed at women, and it makes it available for everybody by being just a good game with good mechanics. And it gives you the freedom to kind of dye the hair, curl the hair, do all these different things. It's not just a game where you cut hair and it goes good, 100%. It doesn't actually mark you for how well you've done the hair, I don't think. The one in the middle is Mystic Messenger, which is marketed at women. It's about dating cute anime boys. Those are the cute anime boys. So it's a really, really interesting game. I can't figure out how it works. It's played on your phone, and what happens is you text a bunch of boys. You've apparently found this phone, and you get access to this mystery messenger service, and which is great, apparently, because if that happened in real life, the boys wouldn't want to date you. They'd want to find out where you were and take the phone back. But with Mystic Messenger, you're talking to these boys and you're finding out about their lives, and it's all adorable. And the game on the right is Style Boutique on the DS and 3DS. It's a series that's been going for a while now, and it's surprisingly good because it actually cares about its subject matter, which is fashion. You run a fashion boutique and people come in and they say what they'd like, and the difference with that, as opposed to most fashion games, is that the clothes actually look good. I find it amazing that so many people can do fashion games where the clothes are ugly and they're saying, oh, make me a fashionable outfit. And you go, I can't with what I've got. Sorry, you're just going to have to wear a bin bag out of here. So these are examples of games that don't patronise their audience, that actually care about their subject matter, that research and engage with the community. And that's how you make a good girly game. So it's possible to make a good game for women, marketed at women. You just have to care about what you're doing. Thank you very much. Do I stay here for questions?
Yeah, has anyone got any questions? Yep.
So, my question is, it's obviously a good thing to include feminine subject matter in games. There's not enough of that. But outright marketing it as for girls isn't something that just entrenches gender roles even more in that sense?
Yeah, this is a thing I was worried about actually when I wrote this talk, that it's like a minefield talking about gender and games. But the thing I keep coming back to is that at the moment games are marketed at men and no one really seems to mind that. There's an interesting experiment I saw recently where people took 2 Lego adverts released at the same time, one for boys and one for girls, and they swapped the audio. And the audio for the guys one is all like, yeah, pirate ships and explosions, and then the girls one is all like, oh, we're going to talk like this and it's so nice. And like, I think if you compared the vocabulary and the general tone of how things are marketed at women, you'd see that it's super patronizing. And like, I think it's okay to market things at women. Like, that's how advertising works. It works on stereotypes, and that's not great, but that's how it functions. You just have to make sure that it's not talking down to your audience. Like, I think it's okay to say, hey, you might like this, like, come over here, you might like this. And, you know, painting in broad strokes is never going to be great, but that's how you get people involved. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Any other questions? Yeah?
What type of mechanics do you believe are excluded or maybe kept or maybe insisted on in those type of games that you think they are not patronizing or
Mechanics?
Yeah.
God, I don't know. This is mostly talking about marketing.
For example,
Yeah.
I would assume that there is not enough or there is very few competition or shooting, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I kind of wanted to avoid talking about because it sort of runs on stereotypes, but stereotypes that have been like proved through research, where women tend to not like as you say, the competitive side of gaming. Not to say that they don't at all, but games that women tend to like more are about relationships and community and engagement and that kind of thing. And I think just having more games that move away from the competitive side of gaming is also super important because it's more representative of how different people play games. Like, I don't particularly like playing competitive games, whether that's because I'm a woman or just because I hate conflict is up for debate. But yeah, more ways to play games I think is important. So yeah.